You're listening to the Communications Business Advisor podcast, the podcast for communications professionals in the corporate world who are committed to advancing their work and our field's reputation as critical business advisors that are not only invited to the decision-making table, but are required there. I'm your host, Tara McDonagh.
Hi, everyone, and welcome back to the Communications Business Advisor. I'm Tara McDonagh, and this is the season finale. I'm taking the summer off. I do the same thing every year when it comes to the podcast only, really. I want to allow some time for new ideas to percolate, hold some interviews for next season, some of which I've already booked, and I'm really excited about bringing all of you. And also, frankly, just spend some time in the sunshine, because after what New England brings us, trust me, it is very much needed after the winter. I will be back in September with new episodes here, new guests, and something I've been developing in the background for a while now that I'm excited to share more about when it's totally ready. But the short story, or a little bit of the preview, is that it's a framework for assessing where communications teams actually sit in terms of authority and what's possible next. Because we don't really know what could be unlocked unless we understand where we are today and also what's possible. More on that at the end of today's episode. But don't worry, I will still be over on LinkedIn with my regular posts, and I'll be sharing additional insight through emails to those who sign up for those. So if that's you and you're not subscribed yet, head over to taramcdonagh.com and sign up for Level Up emails. I send them out usually around every 2-ish weeks, so no worries about being spammed. I mean, I get it. I don't want that either. But with the Level Up emails, I get into a little more depth over there than I can on LinkedIn. And with the summer taking a break, that's a really good way to get a little bit more additional insight. Oh, and if you're looking for a community of women in communications to spend the summer with, to learn from, gain some professional clarity, grow your career, and get some insight from me, the Shoreline by Raise the Tide is open. You can also find that at taramcdonagh.com, and we'll link to that in the show notes. Okay, on to today's episode. Since it's the end of the season, we're going to take a look at what I said this season would be about and what it actually became. Something more significant than I expected. So let's talk about it. I started this season back in January by declaring the word of the year for professional communicators. And that word also became a whole topic of this season in so many ways. That word is... Okay, I don't mean to make you wait for it too long, but there did need to be a dramatic pause there. The word is authority. First, some background on this word of the year thing. Every year, I name a word of the year for communications professionals. It's something I started a few years back, and at this point, people expect it, which is pretty cool. The word of 2024 was no. That one got people fired up, because saying no in a field that's been trained to say yes to everything, to serve, to be responsive, to make it happen, saying no, that's a radical act. Now, a lot of you loved it, but a handful of you genuinely freaked out. And I still think about that, because the freak out told me everything about where this field actually was at the time. And in case that's still you, to be clear, no is a vibe, not a prescription. I don't want you to actually go out there and say no to everything. The idea is just to be more focused on what should be done proactively and how to get people to see that what you already know as an advisor when they make requests, to essentially get them to agree with your no before you actually have to say it out loud, even if it's them getting there begrudgingly. Last year, the word for 2025 was partner. We don't serve business areas. We're not a service area. We partner with them. We have joint goals for the organization, and that's what we need to capture in our approach, because we don't have internal clients. We have internal partners. It sounds like a small shift in language here, but it's really not. It's a complete reframing of what communications is there to do and educating others about what that is along the way. And then this year's word, authority. I named authority as the word for 2026 because I kept seeing the same pattern. Communications leaders who are capable, trusted, respected, and yet still being brought in after the decision was made, at least some of the time, right? Still, they were being accountable for outcomes that they didn't get the chance to influence. That's not a talent problem, and it's not a motivation problem. That whole dynamic, that's an authority problem. Being deeply accountable for an outcome without being deeply empowered to shape the decision. That's the problem, and that's what authority is meant to fix. So it's very different from being authoritative, just so we're all clear on that. That's what I said at the start of the year. Now, here's what actually happened. This season went deeper than I expected. I did an episode on what I call the helper trap. That one landed differently than I thought because it's not just about helpfulness being a bad habit. It's about the fact that helpfulness is how most of us got rewarded early in our careers. We were the ones who figured it out, made it happen, stayed late and delivered. And that got us promoted right up to the point where it stopped working. Because at a certain level, the game changes and nobody tells you. You still need to deliver, but you also need to influence, and that shift is massive. And more importantly, the organization may not necessarily welcome it, but it is still necessary to advance your career. We hear about how we need communications to have a position in leadership. The chief communications officer or corporate affairs officers. I'm one of the ones who's been espousing that. But we need to end the helper trap to make that happen. And that's on us. I still hear from you about this one a lot. I guess I struck a chord here. And there's going to be a lot more content I'll share about throughout the summer in emails and on LinkedIn about what I call the helper trap and how to advance past it. If you haven't listened yet, I suggest you go back and give it a whirl. That episode is 42, I think. It's when helpfulness becomes a career ceiling. So check it out and let me know what you think. Then there was the strategy series, episodes 44, 45, 46. Those three were about something related to all of this. Communication strategic plans. The one episode that I really want to hit on here is the strategic plan that's genuinely strong, but acts as a very polished document that doesn't really get used operationally. Strategy that doesn't change how the organization engages the function of communications, whether that be PR, internal comms, public affairs, all of the above. Because the real goal with a communication strategic plan isn't the actual document. It's the behavior change you want for how executives and others in the organization treat and engage with communications. With the right timing, the right level of conversations, the right decision-making authority, the right level of autonomy. For me, I use communication strategy as a way to achieve that behavior change using my framework approach. In some senses, the strategy is the grounding tactic for change. Yeah, strategy is a tactic because behavior change is where authority lives or dies. And then there's what I saw with clients this season. Not really stuff I shared on the podcast, but things that happened while I was working with people this season. And this is the part I want to spend a little more time on because this is authority in practice, not in theory, not what I'm telling you about could be real, what actually is real. I'm working with a client right now who came to me because she wanted to create a new team structure and a communication strategic plan with a new approach to the work that better mapped to where the organization's going. I connected with her right away. Mentally, right? We just got each other. And I knew without any doubt that I could help. Because, yes, she wanted the strategy and team structure, but what she really wanted was behavior change and how the organization engaged with her team. And she knew that started within her own team, how they were structured, operated, advocated, and how they saw themselves. And to be clear, this is an already strong team. It is a genuinely great group of talented players, but she still saw significant opportunity, and she was spot on. Here's what happened so far, because there's lots more work to be done. I'll do my best to make this long story as short as I can make it. I can become an enthusiastic overtalker when I talk about clients doing great things, so I'll do my best here to rein it in. So for context, she had been working on pulling in pockets of communications from various areas of the organization over years in an attempt to create one centralized function. Bringing the shadow communicators into one fully connected team. But ideally, more of them would be folded into comms for the organization to operate at the best way it could moving forward. So there were some of them that were moving in. There were significantly more that weren't yet there. So during our process, we kept this at the forefront. We didn't wait for it to happen to keep progressing, but we planned that it could come together even as the conversations were happening about it outside of our scope together. We needed to ensure that we factored this all into our process. And then it happened. The final comms areas that had been siloed were centralized. Her team size doubled. And through the work we'd already been doing on the new team structure and operating model, we were able to plan with that insight that these new team members would fit nicely into the model we were building, because we intentionally considered a broad view of what the organization needed, not just what existed. As part of our work together, she also built the case for and advocated for new roles that the organization needed on her team in comms, with the backing of the executive team. That is no small feat. I know you all know that. It is a huge deal. She centralized the team and got additional roles. So the communications function is now centralized. New roles are being filled. A new team structure and operating model that will allow the team to grow, operate more effectively, make the best use of each other's skills, and get the best work from the team to advance the organization's goals is in place. The new structure is an entirely different approach to how the communications work is done. Different roles, different ways of working, and it's now a structure the team was involved in creating. That part's important, and that actually is connected to my approach. It's also not the standard internal comms, external comms model. To be clear, that model does work for many organizations, and I do advise it, again, for many. But this team had just reached a stage of maturity, and the organization had reached a point of change where they needed something different. And again, the team, they saw that themselves. They wanted change. They just didn't know what it could look like. So here's the thing. Developing that new team structure and building the communications strategic plan were always part of the work. But those aren't the outcomes. Not the real outcomes. The outcomes that are already starting, even when we're still steps away from the finish line, the real outcome of the strategy and the team structure work, it's behavior change. And it's starting now. How do I know that? Well, first, she was able to make the significant structural changes to the team operating model that she knew were needed. That was huge. Changing the way the team operates, new ways of working, and centralization at the same time. That did impact other business areas, but they got on board. Second, she got new roles approved. These are roles that we determined the organization truly needed in comms to do great work, regardless of any roles that existed either centrally or within pockets of the organization. So whether they were decentralized teams or shadow communicators or whatever, we still needed these new additional roles. That's huge to get approval for that. Third, and this is the big one, Leadership now talks about communications in rooms that she and they are not in. When the people above you start advocating for your team when you're not there to advocate for yourself, that is authority. Not declared authority, not being authoritative. It's built authority. And her boss, she's a partner in this with her. The two of them making the case in their own ways, supporting each other as they advocate for change for themselves, the team, and the organization's benefit. Now, we've got more work to do, lots more, but I am so excited about where she and her team are. When I talk about the right client at the right time who's ready, this is exactly what I mean. And, that might not be you right now, but maybe it is. We'd probably know right away. So if you're thinking about it, it's better to reach out than sit thinking about it more and more and more, deciding whether or not it's worth it. Anyway, then there's also a former client. She and I moved on from working together a year or so back because, honestly, her team was in a significantly better place than where we started. That's the goal. You don't need me forever, but she did reach out recently. She's a friend now, and that happens with most of my clients. I already knew her team size and budget had more than doubled while we worked together. Yes, and that was part of our process. And that was a whole thing, by the way. Nothing changed in terms of who our boss was, but the prior strongly declared no that she heard anytime she talked about resources, staff, or her role, and anytime I talked about it. Actually, the first time I talked about it, that changed to a yes. It changed through our approach together, through her advocacy and building that authority, through this process that I worked on with her. Anyway, she reached out to tell me it kept going. The trajectory held, and it kept moving forward. More good news to share with me, and she just wanted to say thank you. That fills my cup so significantly. You have no idea. I am more excited about my clients' and former clients' wins than I am my own. It's probably a bad thing as a CEO, but it's a really great thing as an activist for this field and someone who cares deeply about the people that I work with. So all of this to say, here's what I've learned and what this season reinforced for me. People might come to me for the strategy or the team structure or some sort of change or something that specific that they think they need. But what they actually build is authority. The shift in how communications is engaged, how it's treated, how it's talked about. Now, that doesn't happen overnight. And honestly, if all you wanted is the strategy, you could just build it yourself or get a consultant to deliver a strong one for you. But like all of you, what people see on the surface isn't the true value of what you offer. People might see emails or speeches or media hits when it comes to your work, but we both know what you actually deliver is much more profound. And the same is true of my work. You might see the communication strategy, the team structure, or even good counsel in the moment as the thing that you brought me in for. But the authority change, the change in how the team is treated and engaged, that is the actual outcome. The additional staff, more resources. Can anybody say budget? Yes, don't be afraid of it. You get more. Or entirely different relationship to the work. That's all that I actually deliver in partnership with you. My client recently said that the one thing she really loves about working with me is that I'm not trying to usurp her authority. I'm trying to build it with her, for her to take. I don't want a relationship with her executives. I did that in my own corporate career. I want her to have those relationships. And having been inside organizations as both a comms leader and inside agencies where the consultant approach was oftentimes very different, I understand that what I'm doing here is truly unique. And I'm excited about doing it. I'm ready for what's next. And yes, I'll be honest, at times it's a slog for clients. It is real sustained work. And there are moments where my clients get frustrated by a snag they hit along the way or a particularly prickly executive. We all know them, right? But it's so worth it because the alternative is staying on the carousel. Like picture yourself sitting on that horse, going round and round, trying to figure out how to get off while the same dynamics keep repeating. And it can even follow you job to job. That is so not worth it. Get off that merry-go-round of insanity. And something else happened this season that I wasn't expecting. Across client work, conversations, and everything I was seeing in the field, I started to see a pattern I hadn't quite figured out how to talk about before. Leaders who would tell me they and their team were already advising. They were already business advisors, right? We all know I talk about being a communications business advisor. It's the name of the podcast. They'll tell me that they're respected. They're doing good work. They believe in their team. Their team is talented. And they were right. They were absolutely respected and acting as advisors in many cases. But there was also a layer that they hadn't unlocked yet. A level of counsel, organizational reputation, and how the function operates that they just never seen modeled. So they didn't know that it was possible. They couldn't see the gap because they'd never seen what was on the other side of it. It's kind of like looking at the horizon on a beach and thinking that you've reached the last place that you can possibly go. And then someone gives you a boat and suddenly you can see so much more of what exists out there, what's possible. New worlds, new challenges, yeah, to be honest. That pattern, it's now a framework. I'm at the very tail end of developing it. It's a way of assessing where communications teams actually sit in terms of authority and what's possible next. Not really a maturity model in the corporate jargon sense, something more specific and useful than that. This is the cool thing I mentioned at the top of the episode. I'll be developing and testing it over the summer, so thank God that I'll have a little bit more time away from the podcast to do that. And I'm looking for a small number of people who want to be early adopters. If you want to know where you and your team sit, reach out. I have a few questions that will help you see exactly where you are, why, and what's possible next. DM me or find me at McDonagh.com. So, here we are. That's the season. No partner authority. 3 words, 3 years, 1 direction. The field is capable of so much more than it's currently permitted to do. And my job in the podcast and consulting work and all of the content I put out, it's all to make that visible. To name the dynamics that keep smart, capable communicators stuck and to show what's possible when you do the work to unstick them. I'll be back in September. Have a good summer, everyone. And keep advising. Always keep advising.
If you're interested in working with me to advance your work and your team's reputation as critical business advisors, never order takers, check out McDonagh.com. Thanks for listening to the Communications Business Advisor podcast. If you found this episode helpful, please leave a rating or a review. It helps people find us, and we can't ignite a movement without sharing the message. See you next time, where we'll continue to do the work to elevate our field's reputation and elevate the careers of the people in it. I created Raise the Tide to help elevate our field and the women in it. It's part community, part coaching, part professional development, and part mentorship. It encompasses all of these things because it takes all of these things to rise in your career. I asked a few Raise the Tide crew members to share what their experiences have been like in the program, and here's what they had to say. What's one thing that's been surprising to you about Raise the Tide?
I honestly was surprised by how quickly I felt part of something really unique and special.
Something that surprised me about being in Raise the Tide is just how much I feel seen. My crew holds up a mirror for me and even helps me see myself in ways that I haven't before. It's extremely validating, and it's a pretty powerful experience.
I was really nervous at first about how would I gel with everybody else in the group, and would we really get to know each other, and would we really become close? It's amazing how suddenly they become your biggest group of cheerleaders and your biggest advocates and the ones pushing for you and rooting for you. And that was really surprising to me.
If you're interested in this program, head on over to TaraMcDonagh.com and complete the Raise the Tide form. A rising tide raises all ships, but we're not the ships. Together, we're the force of the tide, raising the ships for our entire industry.